Hello, I'm George Cairns, and in this video lesson I'm going to show you how to process a street photography style image to create a cleaner composition. Here's our start image, and you can see there we've got lots of clutter at the left here. There's no real composition because it's more of a snap, but we can carefully compose the shot and improve problems with exposure as well. You don't have time necessarily to set up the aperture and the other camera settings to get a decent exposure, so things are quite dark here, and we could get some more highlight detail in the sky. Let's look at the end result. And here's a much cleaner, more correctly exposed composition with the guy sitting at the bottom left anchoring the image. The eye is drawn to the girl in the middle and then to the building at the right. So this looks like a much more considered composition, but that's all done in Digital Photo Professional 4, Canon's free image editing software. Okay, kick off by downloading our raw street start file and pop it into your computer and browse to it in DPP4's folder window. It'll appear up here. Then you can click on Edit Image and it'll appear in a larger screen here with the tools panels to the side. Now, before we make a cleaner composition in our street photo, it's worth cropping the shot first, because then you don't spend time worrying about the tones in areas that are going to be cropped out. So the first palette we're after is this cropping palette here. Click to select that, and that gives you the crop tool. So by default, the cropping aspect ratio is on free, which means I can create a crop of any shape I like. But for something more constrained and conventional, you can choose a shape for the crop ratio. I'm going to go for a fairly straightforward 4:3. Now, whenever I drag the corners here, it's going to crop, but keep that 4:3 proportion. Now, you could have a very tight street photo here with the guy on the left, the lady on the right, but I'm going to bring out some of the landscape here and some of the buildings, but I don't want to get any of the clutter at the left here, so I'm just going to crop that out and have the guy anchoring the image at the bottom left. The lady's fairly central. You can click and drag to fine-tune the position, like so. I'm going to take that in a little bit. And now the eye is drawn from the guy to the lady to the building, and that's a much tighter and cleaner crop for my street photo. To apply that, what we need to do is go back to the basic panel, and you can see the cropped version like so, and you can always go back at any time and fine tune it because it's non-destructive editing. The original information is always available to you at any time, even after you've closed and then reopened Digital Photo Professional 4. But let's pop back to the basic image adjustment panel and let's just tweak the overall brightness by dragging this slider to the right. This is like opening up the aperture in camera. If we go too far, then you're going to blow out the highlight detail there. So something like 0.50 is a start. That slides the histogram towards the right there, brightening up the shadows, midtones and highlights equally. We can add a little bit more contrast as well by making sure Auto Lighting Optimizer is ticked. And let's just take that to strong. And that just brightens things up a little bit more and reveals a little bit more shadow detail as well. Let's scroll down now to picture style, and at the moment we've shot on a faithful style which gives us a fairly flat contrast, and that's quite a safe way of approaching things, especially in contrasting lighting scenarios where you've got some bright highlights and some shadows. But if we set this to landscape, it's going to boost the contrast and increase the color vibrance as well. So now we've got more vibrant colors, a little bit more contrast in the darker parts here, and you've also got some highlight detail. But we need to make some selective adjustments now to bring back some more highlight detail and selectively lighten up these slightly dark shadows. And to do that, we can pop down to advanced, and let's lighten up these shadows first of all by taking the shadow slider to the right. Let's take that up to 3. And that's brightening up the shadows in the photograph. The histogram at the top will be sliding more towards the right in the shadow end. And then we can claw back some of the missing highlight details by taking the highlight slider down to the left to about -4. And that's clawing back some of the missing highlight detail. So we've got more detail in the shadows now, and indeed in the highlights, thanks to this selective adjustments in the advanced panel. Now, when you lighten up underexposed areas, you tend to get a bit of noise in those areas. So let's just scroll up to the top here and get rid of that noise by going to the Adjust Image Detail panel, which is this one here. And you can then click here to sample an area that might have some noise in it, like this area here. You can fine tune the sample by clicking in this window here. And in noise reduction, you can see it's defaulted to a 7 for luminance noise. If I take that right down, you'll see there's lots of speckles of noise there. So let's take that back up to the default 7 to smooth things down without losing too much detail. Chrominance noise is much worse normally. If we take that to the left there, you can see nasty speckles of various colors. Let's take that up to 12 to make sure we smooth those out. It's easier to get rid of luminous noise without blurring crucial details. So a higher value here is fine. So there we have a slightly noise reduced image there that's looking nice and clean. The composition's improved and the colors are looking a little bit garish actually. So I'm going to go back to the basic panel here, and I'm just going to take the color saturation down a tad for a little bit more natural street photography style color, like so. Now that I'm happy with my shot, I can save a version to share online via Twitter or Facebook, for example. So click on the save icon at the top there, and then it's going to save it as a JPEG, which is quite compatible with lots of different destinations. If you are going online, you don't need a huge resolution like this. So something like 150 will give you a lighter and easier to post file, and then just click save, and it'll go into a folder as a JPEG, like so. And your original RAW file is always going to be available to you with all the information that it contains. So you can create different versions of this scene by changing the crop, for example.